Anabolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Pro Physique Code. And this episode is going to come out when, Lexi? Because we've got our one for this Monday. This is going to be the week of the Olympia episode, right?
Yes, it will be. I'll have this one out. So yeah, it'll be the Monday before the Olympia, just because all of us will be traveling out west. So we had to record a little. We're recording a little early today, not our usual time. So that way we have some podcast to get out for you guys.
Yeah.
The sun has just come up. We just had breakfast. Well, I just had breakfast. Paul's waiting on his.
It's 8 a.m. I got up at like 6 today because I wanted to get ahead. So when we did this podcast, I was, but then I looked and it was like 7:40 and I hadn't eaten breakfast. I'm like, crap, I don't have time to cook. I really want eggs today, so I'm going to wait till after. But Evan had a different kind of breakfast. What'd you have, buddy?
Yeah, I had a little insomnia the other night, so I really didn't sleep very well, and I had a long day yesterday. So I just ordered some Five Guys last night and proactively ordered 2 burgers so I could save one to have for breakfast this morning.
You guys crack me up. I feel like you guys can literally eat, I feel like anything. And like, I think back to when we went to Pittsburgh for the Pittsburgh Pro this past year and like walking into the Airbnb. So like I have all my food prepped that I put in the fridge and you guys have your like chips and Oreos and you crack me up. And Paul, I saw that you reviewed last night the Reese's Cup Oreo collab. Give us a review.
Yeah, I'm
I'll
not much
give
of
a
a
review on
candy
that.
guy. Like, I don't get too excited over candy. I stick with the same tried and true stuff. But I love Oreos and I love Reese's peanut butter cups. And I thought, well, that's an odd thing that I've never heard of that before. I thought maybe that should have happened years ago. I don't know. It's ridiculously good.
It's so good.
The one that intrigued me was the, I don't know if you tried it, was the peanut butter and jelly Reese's cup. I never tried that, but I love peanut butter and jelly. So I don't know if you tried that one. Did you?
I'm not a peanut butter jelly guy. I loved them as a kid. I think I grew out of it. I don't know. And I'll be honest, I'm not even a peanut butter person. Like, I know that's probably heresy on a podcast that's related to bodybuilding because peanut butter seems to be the obsession for most people. I don't crave peanut butter. I don't dislike it. I just don't like obsess over it.
Yeah.
I got a packet of those Reese's Oreo God's gift to the world on the way back from the Battle of the Bodies, and yeah, it made my drive much more pleasurable.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was surprised that, because I think when you try a new candy like that, you're like, well, it's not going to be better than a Reese's peanut butter cup, but it's the way they managed to create the creamy part of the Oreo on the top and make it crunchy, and then they just have a little bit of like Oreo pieces in the peanut butter.
Yeah.
I've got
Did
two
you have the
left.
full size one?
Yeah, because I got the king size, so there's
Yeah.
4, so I got 2 left for today that I'm gonna have at some point, probably.
Those are better than the mini ones because the full size ones almost feel like they have a full Oreo kind of
Yeah,
mixed in with it. The smaller ones aren't like that.
yeah. So yeah, they were. I was at Target last night getting some odds and ends, and I just noticed it, and I thought, huh, that's new. I've never seen that before. So, and I'll be honest, I've been a little bit of an Oreo-aholic lately because they're vegan, and so I just digest them well. So when I have a sweet tooth or something, and my kids like Oreos, obviously. So I've been experimenting with different types of Oreos.
all the girls in
Delicious.
prep right now that are listening are probably like, shut up, shut up. Like, don't talk about it anymore. Oh goodness. Well, yeah, we're gonna do
Oh, I forgot I had ice cream too this morning. Forgot about that.
oh, Evan, we love you for that though.
This banana pudding ice cream. Amazing.
Was it out of like actual ice cream or out of a creamy?
Actual ice cream from Kelly's homemade ice cream next door.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It was left over from the other night. I did not eat it all in one night, so that's a win for my book. So health and breakfast for me this morning. Ready to go.
For sure. Yeah. Well, we're gonna do basically the last episode that we put out at this point was a Q&A, and we really like doing Q&As because I think it allows us to kind of, one, hear what you guys are just fascinated in and want to know more about, and it allows us to kind of touch on like a wide variety of things. So we're going to just kind of extend into today and do a Q&A part 2 with some of those questions that we didn't get to in the last episode. Let's see, is there anything else we want to say before we get going? At this point, when this comes out, we'll have just completed Command the Stage San Diego. So sorry if you missed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Not even worth mentioning the ticket sales. Actually today Brett's going to make a post for our final little spot for it. So,
Okay. Okay.
um,
Yeah. I'm sure we'll have people that are like, oh, I wish I could have come. I didn't know about it. And I feel like that happens every time. But I mean, I know I've posted a lot. We've talked about it a lot. So I don't know what to tell people at that point.
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
it's, uh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be probably one of our smaller events, in size, but I think that's just going to enhance the people that get to come and probably our experience too, because I know those weekends for me are overwhelming with trying to keep up with work and trying to get the most out of the experience and being in the moment. Um, so it'll be nice. It'll be a nice. Here's my concern, guys. I wake up every day at 5:45.
I
Do you
know
know
what
what
you,
that time is in California?
well, I was thinking about that last night too, Paul.
Almost 9 a.m.
Yeah, no, that's,
2:45, Evan.
yeah, 3 hours behind.
Oh, there's behind us, right?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that last night too, Paul, because you and I have the flight on Thursday night, and I think we get in at like 9 West Coast time, which is pretty late for us, but we'll probably wake up really early the next morning and have a lot of time to work, which will be kind of nice, like, to have all that done with before the event starts. But yeah,
I'm
I
such
think
a.
I land the same time you guys do.
So
yeah.
we have our flights from here to San Diego, from San Diego to Vegas. I don't know if I got a flight home from Vegas yet.
I don't know if you did either. Because I was texting Jamaica, because
I'll text
obviously,
her. She manages that.
yeah. Evan, are you going to the Olympia?
I am not. No.
Paul, I don't think I may not that I need to discuss this on here, but I don't think we have the same flight going to Vegas because I wanted to stay a little bit later on Monday just to maybe explore a little
Oh,
bit.
that's fine. I've got a couple girls doing the Amateur Olympia, and it's Tuesday.
Yeah,
Why
it's
Yeah,
can't they make that damn show Thursday? I swear, dude. Like,
I know, I know.
I know there's a lot of events around the Olympia, but it's like, man, that show is Tuesday. I can't fly back to Tampa for a day or two, then go back. So I'm gonna be. Luckily, our buddy Brett is, out there, so I get to spend some time with him. A couple days of chilling.
Yeah. No, that'll be nice. So, I mean, plus, like, flights from Vegas to, or I'm sorry, San Diego to Vegas are really inexpensive, like direct flights. So, yeah, it doesn't make sense to go back to Tampa and then go back to Vegas a couple days
No, no, no,
later. So, yeah,
no.
it'll be a fun-filled week. But yeah, you guys want to get right into our questions then? I know I have a list. Do you guys want me to start with?
Yeah, I think we're going to use your list because I think we got through most of my questions. There was one question that I had a client ask, that I'll throw in at some
Okay.
point, but yeah.
Okay. So we'll start with this one. And I think I had like a couple people ask this question, like in the same, not in the same way that they phrased it, but it was a very similar question of kind of when do you know in a growing season or an improvement season to stop pushing food? So, like, obviously, you're going to reach a certain point in your building season where maybe you either stop pushing food or food increases become less. So let's talk about some things that we look for in our athletes to know maybe when to kind of just start to to stop pushing food.
When you have to eat Five Guys for breakfast. Oh, I see
that's
the
mute
new guy,
counters of a
Evan.
great
The
spot.
new guy's
Oh
over
yeah,
there. Here he
yeah,
is.
he's up
Yeah.
there being an idiot.
You need a cat gram. You need to start documenting your transition to a old cat lady.
Yeah, we'll see how long he sticks around. This guy, we'll see.
Um, yeah. So the question is, when do you know to stop increasing calories? Because I think some people think there's never a never ending, like, you can just push your calories up. That's not the case. There is obviously a ceiling. Um, I mean, first things first, if you get discomfort, like I never like athletes to feel like they are uncomfortable eating. That's why I love our hunger score on our check-in form, because when I have someone's calories in a good place, and I'm actually documenting now my multiplier, Lexi. So like the athlete's weight compared to their calories, because I think there's some correlative data here that we can learn from. Um, so let's just say I've talked about this quite a bit. 10 times your body weight in calories is where I start to go, that's a little low. We got to start to paying attention. 15 times your body weight in calories is a really nice place to start prep. For my freaks, 20 times I've gotten to.
Mhm.
Um, so now you have a little bit of data that you can tell people. But when that hunger score gets to a 0 or a 1, and they're at 15, 16, 17 times body weight, I realize like, okay, we probably got to stop pushing the food. And
Yeah.
but you guys, we can even talk about this. This is when you can start to adjust macronutrients, because if someone's got a really high protein intake and they're complaining, you can drop their protein and up their carbs and their digestion might improve. And there's not necessarily going to be any anabolic benefit to having protein so high when carbohydrates are protein sparing. So, there's some of that too that can adjust.
Yeah, I think when hunger really, really falls, you can. I like to drop the protein and drop the fats a little bit and try to get the carbs up a little bit more, especially around the training days. I think that can help a lot of times with digestion and satiation with that. I think one of the other things that's a big red flag to me with is when their weight continues to go up every single week, and we're past that initial phase, and it continues to go up. If they're going up like 0.5% of their body weight every week, that's a little quick, and things can start to get a little bit out of control at that point with it. So. Um, when their weight consistently goes up week after week after week after week for about 4 to 5 weeks in a row, I'm like, okay, it's time to probably pump the brakes a little bit here, especially if food is high. If food is high at that point. But every athlete's different, right? Some people can handle a lot of food, some people can't handle a lot of food. I think hunger is important. Like you said, Paul, on the low end, you don't want people force feeding themselves. Um, it's not open bodybuilding, right? Like we don't need you force feeding yourselves. But also, too, I have some athletes that no matter how much food you give them, they're always starving, right? So I cannot use that as a guide either. When they're eating, 2,900 calories on a daily basis and they're 121 pounds and saying they're still hungry, you know, um,
I would
there's
also
got
say
to be a point.
I feel like there's also the opposite spectrum of that, and maybe not as common, but you have some athletes that just, and I think part of it, if I'm being very honest, I think part of it is a little psychological too. Some athletes just they're always reporting that they're not hungry or that they're kind of full, right? And I think part of that is a psychological maybe kind of setback around eating more. But I agree with both of you guys. I think hunger cues and never letting an athlete get to that point where they feel like they're force feeding. However, if let's just say, because I think we've all had them before, where you'll have a client that reports like a 0 or a 1 on the fullness scale, and they're not really eating that much food. That's when I like to kind of jump in and look at an athlete's food log and like see what they're eating too. Because I think some people really struggle with that transition from prep to reverse dieting to like let go of some of those prep foods. And when I say prep foods, I'm talking like high volume, low calorie things, adding shredded lettuce to everything, doing a lot of rice cakes. Like some people really struggle to let go of that stuff. So, of course, if you're trying to bump their food up and that's what they're filling their macros with, like those high volume, low calorie things, it's going to make it really hard for them to be able to eat more food without feeling overly full, right? So I usually like to see clients' food logs too, to just see like, are they abusing maybe some volume foods, or do we need to, take some of those things down or out so that way we can push food higher? So that's something I always like to look at as well, because I think we've all had athletes like that from time to time.
That's
Yeah,
such a good
absolutely.
point, because we talk about the funnel all the time, the prep funnel, which means at the beginning of prep, you're including all this random stuff. You're eating out, you're hitting your macros. As prep gets lower, longer, and you get leaner and you get closer to stage, we and Evan talked about this all the time. Every bodybuilder gets into, Lexi, we get into just repeat mode. We're repeating the same 7, 8, 10 foods because it's predictable, it's easy, it's manageable, and we feel like we're in control. And I've experienced this before. When prep is over, my house is full of prep foods and I'm trying to raise my calories. And I'm like, it's just really hard to raise your calories when you have vegetables and rice cakes. Sometimes it's like, okay, I need to go back to eating more calorie dense foods that digest a little bit better. I've had athletes tell me they eat like oatmeal at every meal because it made them feel good at prep. But I'm like, no, you can't do that when prep is over if it's making you feel full all day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the prep funnel is a really good example too on reverse dieting, kind of thinking about reversing that prep funnel backwards, right? So I think keeping a lot of prep foods in initially is good because you're
Mhm.
hungry. And you can fill that up with more volume, right? Like you can have way more rice or way more potatoes or way more oatmeal because your food's going up more. I think most people end up struggling in reverses because they try to get away from those prep foods quickly and they get into some more of the fun stuff, which isn't as calorically dense, right? Like it's not. And it's or is more calorically dense, I guess a better way to put it. And they'll start adding some things in there that don't really satiate them quite as much, which makes it easier to go over the calories with that standpoint. But if you think about it, kind of like keeping your prep foods, of course, through prep, and then the reversing out through prep the first, 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then kind of expanding your food choices after that. I think that really sets people up for success.
Absolutely. And, last point too on that is I've had some athletes before where like we haven't moved their like we're kind of, midway in their improvement season, food's moderately high, and we haven't maybe moved their food for like 5 weeks, and they're reporting that their adherence is pretty high, but yet their weight just goes up, up, up. And sometimes that's when I also have to have the conversation because I think we've all been guilty of it from time to time. Sometimes whether, we realize it or not, where it's like, hey, are you getting a little too flexible or lax with your tracking? And what I mean by that is I think it's easy to sometimes fall into that trap of like little bites here and there, little things that are maybe being eyeballed and like saying, "Oh, I'm hitting my macros," but truthfully, there's a lot of extra added fluff being consumed throughout the day, right? I think some people psychologically do that, and that can be something I have a conversation with athletes too about as well, especially if we get to that point where it's like, okay, their weight just keeps going up, 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 but we're not really changing anything. We're not adding food. That's usually when I'll have that conversation as well. Of like, okay, are you truly tracking everything like you were in prep? Or are there, 5, 6 little bites that you're having throughout the day that are adding up more than you think they are?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's one of the few times I get concerned with an athlete's reverse is when I'm not adding food, but the scale is going up a pound every week, a pound every week, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Because I don't like when there is an increase in body fat that is not correlated with an increase in calories. I think that's one of the most dangerous pitfalls of prep. And whenever you see a competitor that reaches out to us that has been through prep with another coach and um, been put through the ringer where they're under 1,000 calories for long periods of time. And what happens is they put their body fat back on quickly, but they're also afraid to eat at the same time. So they're like overeating in spurts, putting on a few pounds. It's not coming off. Then they go back to their diet. They maintain for a couple of weeks. Then they binge eat again and splurge, or they just act normal and they're putting on body fat. Next thing you know, they're up 15, 20 pounds from stage weight and they're still trying to eat 1,000 calories a day.
Yeah.
And then they're like, hey, when can we start a prep? And this is why I love my multiplier data because it just shows, okay, because it's hard to explain to some people because, and this is something, Evan, we could talk about here is when an athlete says, like, I want to start a prep, my last stage weight was 25 pounds low where I'm at. I'm maintaining I'm 150 pounds and I'm maintaining my weight on 1,400 calories. They go, well, let me just get blood work and see what's going on. That doesn't show up in blood work. Okay. It doesn't
No.
show up that your metabolism, you're conserving energy, you have not gotten your numbers kind of ramped back up. It might show in forms of like, you might have some lower testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. Those kind of number ratios might be a little bit off, but there isn't a blood test to show like your metabolism's fucked
Right.
from that approach. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love the data, but I do get worried when I see people going, well, we're up 8 pounds from stage weight, but you haven't allowed me to add calories in a couple weeks.
Right.
Yeah. And that's where I kind of get into it with people say, like, people look at, well, it's calories over a week. I'm like, technically I understand how that makes sense, but in the real world, it doesn't work like that. Like if somebody's eating 1,000 calories a day and they go into binge and have 4,000 calories in one day with that, or 5,000 calories in a day, their weight's going to go up. It's going to struggle to get back down, even at that 1,000 calories again, because digestion's not going to be in a good spot with it. And it means prep is going to be difficult, even if you look at the calories over an entire week. right? Or let's
Right.
draw another comparison. Let's say 1,000 calories a day, then they hit 6,000 calories in one day, which equals like 2,000 calories over a day period. The look in the dieting is going to be way different from someone that does that versus someone who eats 2,000 calories a day. Vastly different. Vastly
Well,
different.
it psychologically, it is such a slippery slope if you fall into that mindset of like kind of like counterbalancing things throughout the week. Oh,
Yeah.
I underate today. Okay, so I can have more food tomorrow. And then, on the flip side, having a little extra food one day and thinking in your brain, okay, I'll just cut back a little bit tomorrow. Like, believe me, that is a very slippery slope to fall down. You may be
Yeah.
able to get away with that, at the beginning, but that's where we start to see a lot of those binge restrict, compensation patterns starting to arise. And I would say that used to be one of like the number one questions I got as a coach is, oh my gosh, coach, I overate today. Should I pull back tomorrow with my carbs or my fat? And, maybe there's certain situations, especially if we're deep into prep, but any other time, like I like to tell people, look at every day as a hard reset because it is super easy to just fall into that slippery slope of restrict, binge, or restrict, overeat. It's easier than a lot of people think it is.
Yeah, and that's the psychological part of it, right? So the
Yeah.
psychological part is one of it, and then it's the physiological part of it. I'm just telling you, it is vastly different from someone who eats consistently, a consistent, somewhat consistent amount of calories, someone who has low calories and then overeats really heavily one day. Even though the calories for the week may be exactly the same, it does not translate into the same results. It just does not do that. It doesn't
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, the body is much different after a severe long phase of getting body fat off and being very lean. You got to be careful. Um, you can't eat Five Guys for breakfast.
No. And one of the funny parts too
Dude,
is about
Evan.
this too is when you talk about like in reverses, right? Now I've gone through this with a few people, and they'll get through reverse good, and they'll go on vacation. Or I had a client that ran off or not ran off, but had an event, and she was the coach before, and her coach like she was on a long stretch of really low calories and high cardio, and ended up not doing the show, and then started work with me, and we worked it through reverse, and she went to an event over a weekend and gained 10 pounds. Like she just lost control and gained 10 pounds and came back. We kind of, kept food at a reasonable level. So she dropped like 3 pounds or 4 pounds off of that. But that's her new baseline. Like that's her new baseline. That's where she is now. Like we can't diet. She was dieted for like 7 months hard. We can't go down and pull that down again to get back to where she was before that reverse. That's her new baseline now. It's like 4 pounds up from where she was before. And then we had a conversation again. I was like, if you go do that again and you go up another 10 and we drop back down, you'll be now 8 pounds above your baseline on there. And you can't roller coaster up and down with that stuff. You just can't. And that's really hard for people to understand. And that's why competition prep is not for everyone. It's not because it's difficult to see yourself as lean as you were, go off the rails with it and expect to get back to that same spot again because it's not going to happen. You may be able to do it once, but after that, I've very rarely seen it happen twice, but people can get away with it.
Right. And I think that's why, like we always say too, if you have, and I'm not saying that if this is your case scenario that you'll never be able to compete, but let's say you are somebody who's intrigued by competing and wants to go that route, yet you have some underlying, maybe, severe body image issues, maybe some severe, I don't want to say an eating disorder, but like eating disorder tendencies. Don't think that that means you will never be able to compete, but trust me, believe us, you want to make sure all of that stuff is in a very controlled neutral spot before jumping into a contest prep because
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people will jump into a contest prep with those issues and they don't struggle with those issues during prep, and in fact prep may actually kind of help them. However, where the issue arises is post show. Usually those issues come back and they come back way more prevalent than before,
Yeah.
right? Like prep can be a good quote unquote band-aid for those things throughout the prep journey, but the post show is where those people usually really struggle. So keep that in mind as well. And I think another question that kind of segues into kind of what we're talking about already is how, as coaches, do we recommend, like, what are the best ways to keep a really good, stable body composition in an improvement season?
I
Try
think
to
the
keep a good.
first mistake people, well, and I don't want to say people because I don't think my people make this mistake anymore because I don't let them. But when I did my first prep, and this is no fault of my coach at the time, I just don't think there was a lot of discussion around what to do after a show. I think a lot of prep coaching when I first got into bodybuilding was like you get someone to stage, they get their trophy, you celebrate, have a good life. There was no like, what's next?
Yeah.
Um, so I just went, I just did whatever the hell I wanted. And what I didn't want to do was cardio. And now I always keep cardio in post show. Obviously, it's severely less, but there's just something because what I found is that if you keep cardio in, even at a much lower rate, um, it just helps with hunger. It helps with energy. It helps with digestion. It helps with body composition. The moment I would have somebody in a reverse and get their calories high and I would pull their cardio down, I would notice the scale start trickling forward. And it didn't mathematically always make sense. I'm like, well, I'm only pulling out a little bit of cardio. So keeping cardio in, I feel like is huge. Um, yeah, game changer.
I think I 100% agree with you on that, Paul. I think it's a lot of psychological too. Along with that, I think it helps with your hunger cues. I think it helps your body kind of just stay more balanced throughout of it as well. Even if it's just 20 minutes of cardio 4 days a week with that, like on the low end on things, I think that helps people keep a much better body composition throughout an off season than anything. I do have some people that I don't need to put any cardio in, period, right? And they function very well with that. But that's not the majority of people. It's not. And I also have found too, it allows you to drive food up a little bit higher as
Are
well.
those people naturally active, Evan, or like
Yeah.
super ecto? Okay. Yeah, whenever someone's like, I did a whole prep without cardio, and I'm like, oh, what do you do for work? I'm a bartender. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, you're on your feet 40 hours a week hustling around a restaurant. Yeah.
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 A lot of people are like that. I have one girl I work with that has like, well, actually we have a little bit of cardio in now, but she's an overnight nurse and she works like a week all nights and then doesn't work for a week. And her schedule gets a little bit thrown off that way with it. And, but she's able to do it. But a lot of people can't do that. The vast majority of people, I say, you need to keep some form of cardio in.
I
And I
think I
think,
can remember one or two athletes in my entire career that I didn't have them do cardio of any
yeah.
kind. Like,
I
yeah,
think
it's
for
just,
I
me,
found for me, even when I do a little bit of cardio, I feel better. I look better. My body composition improves immediately. Even with just doing like 25 or 30 minutes, like 5 days a week of it, it improves immediately within a week.
yeah.
listen, I think it's good for mental health. Like,
Hmm.
this last year has been very challenging for me at times. And I'm telling you, there's been days where I'm like, ugh, I'm not feeling good today. I don't want to do anything. I do 30 minutes on the treadmill, an hour on the treadmill. And I'm like, I snap back and I'm like, let's go.
Yep.
Even today, before we did this, I was like, let me get up and do my treadmill so I'm not like a zombie on the podcast. Like yeah,
Definitely
steps,
a good mood
walking is a life
booster.
hack.
Yeah, it's definitely a good mood booster. I think aside from the cardio, two big things for me in terms of what I feel like can help and aid in keeping a really good body composition throughout a growing season is training intensity. Like, are you actually training with intensity to build muscle, or are you just going into the gym, going through the motions? And food quality. I think food quality is something that sometimes for some people can go on the back burner, especially as their food gets high. They kind of start to fit in more of just that, lots of processed things, start to eat out a lot more frequently. And hey, I'm all for a little bit of balance from time to time, but I will tell you, I notice a big difference in my athletes that are eating majority of, like, whole foods at most times, even when their food is high, compared to people that are, eating out several times a week, adding in all the, the fun, I don't know, like hyper palatable stuff to their macros just because it fits. Like, I think food quality does go a long way too.
I absolutely agree, Lexi. And people will disagree with this, and a lot, like probably half the world will agree with me on this, and half of them won't, right? But limiting processed foods will 100% improve your body composition. 100% improve it because your digestion gets better, inflammation goes down, everything looks better. I'm not saying you can't ever have any of that stuff, but I'm saying if all things created equal, and you have no processed foods and processed foods, no one can tell me the one with processed foods is going to look better than the one with no processed foods.
Oh
Like
no,
that's
like,
not a world that's reality to me.
It's the same thing as alcohol. You can include alcohol in prep and you can make it fit your calories, but as soon as you pull it, it's like it's sometimes the question isn't is it bad for you? The question should be is this the best possible option?
Yes. Yes, that's a better way to put it.
And in prep, listen, I eat more processed foods than most people on this planet, and I still walk around at 10% body fat. But in prep, I'm not interested in what I can get away with. I'm interested in going, what is the best? My diet severely changes at the end of prep because I'm like, I don't want any question marks when I get on that stage. I don't want to look across at another guy and be like, did he just eat a little better than me? Did he, no.
right.
Paul, I love that right there. I've never really thought about it like that, but it's what's the best option and what can I get away with? And that differentiate right there
Well,
is
that's what,
available.
hey, look at you doing weird things with the It's it was
The party.
it was the pendulum swing of meal plan to flexible dieting, and
Yeah.
people went, "Oh, your coach does meal plan. That's a bad coach. My coach does macros, so I get to eat this, this, and this. I get to eat a Snickers bar every day and a pint of ice cream because it fits my macros." It's not it shouldn't be about what you can get away with. It should be like, how can you literally turn your body into the most efficient machine and get the most out of it? All those little micronutrients, all those things that are in whole foods that you're missing out on, it has a trickle down effect over weeks and
Oh,
months.
absolutely. It's funny because I was thinking a lot about this. I have like, I guess my record holder for my current client who's eating the most food, and she's been eating around this amount for like, gosh, over 6 months at least. She's eating over 400 grams of carbs. I think fats are like well over 70. And she's a mom, she's middle aged, we're getting ready to compete next year, but like, she also lives on a farm where she grows a lot of her own food. She eats so clean. And I feel like I don't know if, I don't want to say like, correlation equals causation, but I feel like there's definitely a correlation between clients that are just eating a lot cleaner, generally can eat a
Mhm.
lot more and get away with it, and still hold a good, healthy body composition. Because I know personally, especially like if, like, well, I think it's a great example because it's coming up, the Olympia, right? At expos, like, I'll usually try, lots of little samples, and a lot of my macros are coming from like those just fun protein snacks. But after a day or two of that, like, I will notice like my digestion is so slow. I feel like I'm holding on to food in my stomach at all times, right? So even though maybe I'm consuming my normal macros, just the essence of getting them in through all that different food that's not like whole foods slows down my digestion, makes me feel more sluggish in the gym. So it kind of has that trickle down effect.
Yeah, if I could say there was one thing, and I know this is impossible to do, but if I could pinpoint one or two things that I see a direct correlation between digestion falling off, progress not being made, body composition going down, is number one, people that eat protein bars every day. I don't know there is a good protein bar out there. I don't know a single person that functions well off protein bars. And the number two is people that eat protein blank, protein pasta, protein ice cream, protein brownies, protein cookies. If it's protein added to something, it's the same thing. I look at it when they add the fiber to something, right? Like keto, or where they take the low carb tortillas where they just take a bunch of the fake fiber and throw it in there, which wrecks your digestive system. Any of those two types of things, for some reason, cause people their inflammation goes up dramatically and their digestion starts to trend downwards. Because it's not like they have a little bit of it, it's something they have every single solitary day, right? Or protein chips, like those Quest chips, all that stuff. When I see people pull that stuff out, it's like everything improves almost immediately.
Yeah,
Right.
I think moderation is definitely key with that stuff. But no, I know what you mean. I mean, even
I
like
really
there's
have regular chips. I regularly have regular chips.
Yeah, I mean, I even know, I mean, there are some really good, like if you look at the ingredients of some of the protein stuff nowadays, I mean, there are some companies that do have some pretty good clean options. However, I mean, I feel like the red flag for me is always when I see something with like an astronomical amount of fiber in it. Like Quest,
Yes.
not to hate on Quest bars, because like I used to eat them, and I'm not
They're not the same, Lexi. They used to be good, then they got
saying
purchased, they Quest didn't own them anymore, and the quality went down the toilet after that.
Yeah, well, I mean, for those listening, if you have a Quest bar, like, don't feel like it's the end of the world. But I think that for most clients, I noticed, like, I had a client that comes to my mind, and I had her cut out Quest bars a couple months ago, and her digestion like immediately improved. But Quest bars, if you look, they have like 13, 14, 15 grams of fiber per bar. That's insane. That's way too much fiber. Like,
Well, and some of that fiber is that insoluble fiber.
Yeah,
So,
it's
like,
it's
there's
all
different kinds of fiber, and if you guys don't know the difference, go buy some shirataki miracle noodles and eat a bowl of that, and then tell me how you feel the next day.
ooh, not great.
Yeah,
Not great. Okay, another question that I want to talk about is, I feel like we've talked about this before, but I probably a good one to just hit on again because somebody asked me if we personally as coaches notice any like differences in our athletes in a prep phase if they are on birth control versus off birth control. So I know I can speak personally on this, but I want to hear if you guys have ever noticed anything.
that's a little bit difficult for me to answer with that because I know there's a lot of controversy around this, but it's it would have to, for me to be able to compare it, it would have to be a full prep on somebody on birth control and then a full prep with him off birth control to really compare and contrast the differences. But also with that too, no prep is ever the same. So it's difficult to kind of pinpoint how much of a difference it makes with it. And look, I'm also know my lane. I'm not an expert on birth control. I know there's a million different types of birth control, and people react differently to different things.
Right.
So me trying to say this is good or this is bad for each individual would be a fool's errand in my eyes with that.
Absolutely.
I always tell girls birth control was prescribed by your medical provider for a reason, whether it's family planning, whether it's because you had painful periods, whether it's, I had a girlfriend who, when she was on her birth control, her emotions swang way worse. So she didn't like to be on it because she didn't feel like herself. So like Evan said, it's one of those things like it's so individualized. And I would never tell someone to come off birth control, even if I thought it could make their physique 50% better. Because if they get pregnant, like, I don't want that on me. That's not my decision. So, yeah, I would never, never, never. That's
I
like
know I
Evan said,
have,
we know our lane.
yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like birth control, like there's so many different types and forms. And I personally, I've been on prep on it and off of it. And for me personally, I did not notice a difference whatsoever. Now, I know some people do talk about like noticing a positive difference when they go off of it. And this is one of those things that I would always recommend, like consulting with your doctor if you're going to go off of it, because I've had two instances recently. I had a client who went off of it well before we started prep, because I would never toil with that stuff like in the middle of prep, but she went off of it well before prep and had a fantastic like response, right? She felt so much better. And then I've also had the flip side where I had someone go off of it and their hormones were a little wacky for a few months. Like they were just very watery and like their body was just getting used to life without birth control. So there's that side of it as well. So what I personally recommend if we're going on or off of it in the middle of a contest prep, probably not. But we could go down a whole slew because I feel like birth control for like nowadays, not to get into too much of the thick of it, but I feel like it is prescribed as like a band-aid for a lot of things like
Yeah.
painful periods or acne. And it's like, okay, it may fix that issue, but it's also like it's a band-aid, right? So, but
Yeah.
again, that's kind of out of my scope. I'm just
Well, I
kind of
mean, aren't they even now talking about the long-term effects of starting birth control at a really young age, and it's got some profound effects long-term on women's health and well-being
No,
because
for
this
sure.
is an exogenous hormone you're adding to your body.
And that's something that, like, yes, that is again, not to get out of my scope, but I like for me personally, I was put on it in my teens for getting my cycle because my doctor, I went through all the tests, everything was normal, but she basically put me on it to induce my cycle. And so at the time, I didn't know any better. I trusted my doctor. And then being on it for so long, it does suppress your sex hormones over the years. That sex binding globulin hormone, it can down regulate that. There's a lot of research coming
Yeah.
out on that. So, again, I'm not a doctor, do your own research, but I think ask yourself also, why are you on it? If you are on it as
Yeah.
like a band-aid for something, maybe reach out to certain doctors. And it can be hard to sometimes find somebody that you can advocate towards, but there are people out there that can help you in a safe manner to come off and, to support your body with the nutrients, minerals, vitamins, supplements that you need when coming off of it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like if you take a birth control to not get pregnant, I think it's a benefit all the way around because if you're not ready
Right.
to have a child or don't want to have a family, like then that's the purpose of it. But let's not kid ourselves with this. And look, again, I'm not a doctor. We can say it all day long, but this is like common sense. You don't have to be a doctor to know this. If you're a younger girl and you're getting on something that changes your hormones, that will have an impact on you. Absolutely can have an impact on you. For sure, it's going to. I mean, it's like I don't know how it couldn't, right? I know there's a lot of stuff coming about how it can change people psychologically, but is that the birth control or is that the society we live in today? Like it could be a million different things that kind of play into that. But I mean, it does impact your hormones, right? It does. So if you're on it for the right reasons, sure, absolutely go do that. But also too, doctors are doctors. All they do is know what's been told to them. That's
Yeah.
it. Like that's it. And people don't think about that. They don't think about that. Science changes people. People's view on things change. It always does. It always does. So take some common knowledge, take some common sense, go speak with your doctor about it. And if you don't feel comfortable with the answer, speak with more about it. Because you can talk to multiple doctors and they can have very, very different outlooks on it. Very different. They're both doctors,
Yeah,
right? So it's just difficult. It's a difficult world we live in. It's great to have all the information, but it's also difficult to decide which information is most applicable to you.
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, you guys want to do like two more questions?
Yeah.
All right. So next question is tips for core control in female athletes.
Another one
Again,
that I like. I think,
good digestible foods, I think is one
yeah,
of
I
the
think
most
we've
important.
talked a lot about digestion. Um, that's probably the biggest. I think a lot can be made about, vacuums and this and that. And while I think there can be some value there, I think more specific to your sport is actually posing practice.
Ah,
Um, you know, it, and something that I think is almost underrated, Evan, actually training your abs. Because I think
Mhm.
sometimes we go, well, abs are made in the kitchen. We don't need to train abs. Listen, they're a muscle group. And if you're not training them, they're not going to look as good as they can look. And what I have found is that doing a little bit of abs almost every day really helps me. Like, I'm not doing 20 sets. I might do one exercise, 2 sets to failure. That's it. Some days I might just do 1 set, but I notice that I can contract my core a little bit better. And I've definitely noticed, at least previously, the bikini division, they didn't want super defined cores. So I just had athletes doing kind of 1 set of abs a day, lightly, not to get big and strong.
well, I
Yeah,
think also doing a little bit of ab work does teach you to engage your core much more efficiently when you're actually training because you are, so you should be getting a lot of indirect core work when you're just weight training in general, right? Like anytime you're doing a deadlift or a squat variation or even a lat pull down, like you're having to brace your core and engage your core. But I do think, like you had said, Paul, like just posing practice, I call them posing reps, right? Like hold your front pose for 20, 30 seconds and then relax and do that like 5, 6 times after every workout. I call those posing reps. And I think that can definitely help with controlling that core. I've also found too that like sometimes some pelvic floor work, especially for my athletes that are masters ladies or just ladies
mhm.
that have had babies. And I mean, even if you haven't had kids, you can benefit from doing this too. But a little bit of that pelvic floor work can help with like, I feel like the most common thing I'll hear from athletes is Lexi, I feel like I have this like lower ab distension. And some of that can be digestion, but also some of it can just be pelvic floor related. So sometimes throwing in a little bit of like pelvic floor work can also kind of help with that core control too.
Yeah, like your abs are a muscle, right? Just like if you can't flex your bicep, how are you supposed to control your bicep? If you can't feel your abs, then how are you supposed to control your abs? I'm gonna give another shout out for like actually like 2 weeks in a row to my client Marie when she first started working with me. Um, her core was not great. I mean, it was hard to control, and we changed a few things. Number one, we moved her ab training to the beginning of her workout, so to make sure that she did it. And number two, changed the vast majority of her food sources up. From she was eating a lot of processed stuff, and we swapped that out for whole foods. And guess what happened? Now her core is super, super, super tight with that. And again, it's digestion and being able to control your core. If you can't control it and your digestion is off, you're going to be in a world of trouble. Look, I can control my core great, but if my digestion's off, and that's the way it was at my last show, I was like distended. And unless I was really sucking in and keeping my core super ultra tight, it would look blown out. And if again, that's I think digestion is so incredibly important. And also, you're right, Lexi, especially in masters ladies and clients that have had children. It's a little bit difficult for them to control that lower core a lot of the times. And I think doing that pelvic floor work is really, really helped a lot of people.
Absolutely. Paul, did you have one that you wanted to end on? I think you said you did have one. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, the thing that my client asked was, why is fat loss so slow?
Oh gosh,
Um,
I feel like there's so many different answers to this.
yeah, and it's a pretty simple answer, but it's not always. This is why I think having a coach is helpful, because the same person that asked me this is losing about a pound a week. She's also almost got tie-ins. So the bottom line is there's just not a lot of fat left on you.
Right?
you're not going to lose 2, 3 pounds a week when you are a 120-pound female with 12, 13% body fat already. There's nowhere for the fat to come off. So I think we've all had this experience where a client checks in and they're down 2 or 3 pounds the first week and they're like, oh, why is it going so slow? I was expecting a bigger drop. And I have to be like, hold up, hold up. Why? What is your expectation? Oh, my last prep, I lost 8 pounds the first week. And I go, let me guess. No carbs and 2 hours of stairs. Yeah, how'd you know? I go, you didn't lose 8 pounds. You just dehydrated yourself. Um, Fat loss is, I mean, it's especially in the bodybuilding sense, it's rate limiting. You
Yeah.
gotta lose it at the right rate. Otherwise, you're sacrificing a lot of things other than body fat. So, my answer to her was, look where we were a month ago. Oh yeah. Look where we are now. Oh yeah. It's so sometimes, we've all been there. We've all done preps where you wake up and the scale is the same every freaking day. And you're like, what am I doing? I'm doing all the cardio. I'm hitting all my numbers. And then you actually look at your update sheet and you go, oh, it's only been like 4 days.
Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
in your head because you're so caught up in the moment.
Right. And
I
it should be slow, especially if you're a bodybuilder and you're wanting to retain your muscle. Like you should, I mean, I know I hate to say this, but like fat loss should be slower. It shouldn't be something that's super fast. I mean, think about like people that go through these really, really crazy weight loss transformations, right? And they lose a lot of weight really quickly. Well, a lot of times they end up just looking skinny at the end, right? Like just skin and bone. And it's like, that's not what you want to look like as a bodybuilder when you're losing that body fat. If you lose it too quickly, you are going to compromise some of your muscle. And like, do you want to be like skinny at the end of the prep, or do you want to be lean and be low body fat but still have that muscle protruding against your skin, right? So I think you have to kind of remind yourself like you are in a sport where I don't want to like slow fat loss is kind of optimal, to a
yeah.
degree.
And it's also, and we see all those memes out there about like women versus men and fat loss, right? Like women do everything perfect, and like men like walks 2 miles and then loses like 4 pounds, right? And it's like girl loses like no weight. But everyone needs to think about this comparatively. And I was thinking about this the other day. It's way easier for guys to lose weight quicker than females. But why is that? It's if it takes 3,500 calories of deficit to lose 1 pound of body fat, and you have somebody that can eat 3,000 calories a day compared to someone that's eating 1,500 calories a day, how much easier is it going to be to cut that deficit off a guy than it is a girl? Way easier. It's way easier to cut more and make a larger deficit in a man to have that because they have more muscle in most of the occasions and they're eating way more calories at maintenance than most females are. And that you have to create a deficit. But if you have, 3,000 calories to start from compared to 1,500 calories to start from, you can only pull back so much with that. You can only pull back so much. And with females, you just have less to be able to pull from a lot of the times, which means that rate of loss is going to be a little bit slower. And a second off that too, it's like you said, Paul, it's going to be harder at the end. And that's why we look at like percentage of body weight lost, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're 150 pounds and you're 110 pounds, 1 pound is not the same as far as that is concerned. It's
Right.
not the same. It's not the same.
And I think also for females in particular, like dieting history matters. There's a
Of
lot of
course.
people out there that want to prep every year. And I'm not saying that that's impossible for everybody. For some people, they can do it. But for a lot of people, like if you're, just taking 2, 3 months out of prep and thinking that's enough to ramp up your metabolism enough to start another prep and be responsive, think again. Like the more and more you have a dieting, like the more dieting history you rack up, the more you have to be strategic about taking time away from being in a deficit if you want your body to continue to respond in future diets or preps.
Yep.
100%. And I think females as a whole restrict calories at an earlier age.
Yeah.
So this is why the guy that just cuts out potato chips and a candy bar drops 5 pounds a week, and the wife or the girlfriend that starts the same diet loses a half a pound. And that's almost like a meme at this point.
Mhm.
That's why, men don't ever restrict calories. In fact, I would say most men at an earlier age are obsessed with the scale going up. I know I was. I know Evan was. Um, and so the first time I dieted, for the first prep I did, like people listening to this are probably going to think I'm lying. So my first contest prep, I was 32. I had spent a year with a coach, building, but I had been lifting weights since I was 16 and only cared about the scale going up. My calories only went higher over the course of those first 12, 14 years. My first prep, I didn't adjust my calories for 16 weeks out of a 20-week prep. The scale
Hmm.
just kept dropping and dropping. Now, what probably happened among that time is I got better at actually hitting my calories. Like the
Yeah.
first week, I was a little bit off. Second week, I was a little bit better. But then I got to a point where I was just in the zone with my diet and cardio. But I remember, like, Lane was like, dude, I can't change anything. You just keep dropping body fat. And to the point where, like, when I finally got stalled, I was like, oh crap, something's wrong. He's like, nothing's wrong, man. You just finally hit maintenance. And I was only a few pounds from stage weight. I ended up winning my first bodybuilding show with maybe 3 adjustments the whole prep. So now, that changed, obviously. But I also probably got better at being accountable.
Yeah. And
Right.
that's a lot of times too, because I'll look at things and some clients, especially lifestyle clients, and I'll look at things, especially guys that their food is pretty low and they're not small men and the weight's not really changing too much. And the first thing that comes to my mind is there's no way you're tracking this accurately. No way.
Right.
No way. Like it's impossible for you to be 250 pounds, it's 1,700 calories, and the scale does not move and you're not hungry. Like something does not add up or make any sense here. Blood work's good, thyroid's good, everything's good, and things don't move. I mean, it doesn't
It's
happen often, but
Yeah, sometimes a hard conversation to have with clients too of like that scenario, Evan, where it's like you suspect maybe there's just some, I don't know, inconsistencies going on. Something's not adding up. They're not tracking something right. And who knows, maybe they think they're tracking everything and there's things they're tracking wrong. I don't know. But yeah, sometimes those hard conversations have to be had of like, are you really hitting your macros or
mhm.
do we need to be a little bit more honest here?
And I know we've talked about this a lot before too, but magically you're like, hey, I need to see some food logs at the end of this week. Let me see kind of what you're eating. I need this broken down specifically. And what a lot of people do is they'll send the real basic, like MyFitnessPal, what's this in the calories, this in the calories. I get more in depth and I'll show them, I want you to break it down like this, the
Oh,
individual macro for each thing, the total calories and macros for each meal. Break it down like that for me, please. And the amounts of each one that you're having. I know it's going to be some work, but what's our other option here? To drop you more calories, to add more cardio. We're already pretty much maxed out here where we should be. Magically, they do that, and it's like they lose 3 or 4 pounds in a week. It's magic.
yeah, I had a client one time and I remember I told her, I said, I kind of call it BLT, bites, licks, and tastes. I'm like, all right, this week we're going to cut that out. She wasn't in prep, but she had mentioned to me that she struggled with those. So we didn't change anything with her macros. She just cut those out and literally dropped like 3 pounds in a week from just all that little added like fluff, those BLTs, those things that were just those mindless little bites and things here and there. I mean, we've all been guilty of it before. Sometimes when you're making your meal, like you have a couple bites as you're making it that aren't tracked and like it can go a long way if you just cut that stuff out.
And it's funny too, because I'll see people that struggle a little bit and they'll say, well, I weighed almost everything this week. And I have a guy in contest prep that did that. He's like, I probably weighed 95% of my stuff this week. And I don't know why the scale. I go, well, what was that 5% made up of though?
Right.
Like that, maybe that 5% was super high or super calorically dense, right? Like if it's 5% of what you're measuring and that's like peanut butter and you're not measuring that, well,
Or you
that's
know
going to
what?
add up
That
Or
super
or
quick.
like what Lexi's saying, or if it was not that he wasn't measuring stuff, it was just that he was grabbing like, I typically grab cashews when I'm hungry or
Hmm.
and when I'm not in prep, I just grab stuff like that. But that adds up quick.
Oh, it
Super
does.
fast.
And actually that brings up a great point. We can kind of end on this regarding food logs. Sometimes I'll look at clients' food logs and I did this week. I had a client who sent me a food log and I was looking at it and she was having like a serving of nuts, either I think it was once a day, but she wasn't measuring them in grams. She was measuring them as a volumetric measurement. And I said, her thankfully her weight's been dropping, but I said, hey, we need to start measuring this in grams because when you're measuring in volumetric measurements, especially for something so calorically dense like nuts or even nut butter, I mean, you could be getting in an extra 6, 7 grams of fat without even really knowing it, right? So, the way you measure things, all that little fluff, it matters, especially when you're in something as extreme as a contest prep.
And that's why it's difficult a lot of times when you'll put a client's calories in and the macros are here. A lot, it's so much dependent on how they weigh the stuff, right? It really is.
Mhm.
Because we can sit here and say, and I'll tell people, like, before I drop the calories more, I'm like, we need to see some food logs. We need to look over this. We need to see exactly what's going on here, because our calories are at a point now to where, like, we can cut a little bit from here, but our options for here are now that we're going to have to push like really low food over the weekends and double your cardio, or we can kind of look at it as what you're currently doing and figure out, if this is what's actually needed along with that. And I have a client competing next weekend, and her food was pretty low and stuff wasn't happening. And she sent her food logs, and going to find out she was just mismeasuring her almond butter that she was doing. And she was having an extra 30 grams of fat a day. 30.
Ooh.
30.
Whoa. How does that
So
even?
she straightened that out. It was just a wrong entry in the tracking app that she used.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she changed that out, and guess what? Magically, just everything fell off a map along with that.
I mean, that's almost 300 calories a day.
Yeah, significant.
That'll keep you in maintenance and prep for sure.
And the
Oh,
same thing I talked about before. I just didn't think you had to ever measure mustard, right? And I was using a good amount of mustard on things. I was having 300 calories a day of mustard and not even realizing it. People
And
think
that's one of the slippery slopes of prep, is that you start to just like, I remember the story of a competitor who was having a coffee in the morning with like creamer and not accounting for it because it was one. But at one point, she bumped that up to 4 or 5 and realized that creamer times 5 was, a couple hundred calories.
Mhm.
oh, yeah. And actually, I have a good example. I remember, like, I think it was a couple months ago. I met somebody at a coffee shop, and I hadn't been to the coffee shop before. And I always get like usually the same thing, like a decaf Americano, and then I'll get like a sugar-free, like a pump of one sugar-free syrup, depending on what they have. And this particular coffee shop had sugar-free dark chocolate, right? So I was like, oh, I want a pump of sugar-free dark chocolate. And I watched them pump the sugar-free dark chocolate. And
Watching.
I sometimes, I know that sounds like silly, but like I will sometimes watch to see what they pump, because I have this fear that they're not going to give me sugar free. But anyways, they pumped the sugar free dark chocolate, and I happened to see the bottle and the label, and it said sugar free dark chocolate. However, it had like, I think it said like 24 grams of carbs per like 1 ounce. And I was like, oh, and they had already made the coffee. So I was like, I didn't want to ask them to remake it, but that kind of sucked. But little things like that, guys, watch it. Like those little, like, just because it says it's sugar free, like at a mom and pop, coffee shop, just little things to watch out for. So, but yeah, do you guys want to wrap it up here then?
No, I'll throw one more thing in there too. And we've talked about this before, Lexi, is if you're big into like diet sodas and things like that, I will never go through a drive-through on prep and order a Diet Coke or something like that, because I do not believe the people pay enough attention to put the right thing in there. I
Oh,
do not trust it. Those people mostly don't give a damn. And if they get a little bit wrong, whatever, who cares? They're not going to care. They're skinny anyways. Like that's thoughts that go through people's heads with this stuff. They just don't care. So I won't do it unless I go in and watch them do it. I don't trust it, because look, you get extra 60 grams of carbs in that. That's a lot. And for some people, that's like over half their carbs for the whole day.
yeah, that's like a total fear of mine. I don't get diet sodas. Like even when I go, if I haven't gone in forever, but if I go to Wawa and they have that like really awesome drink machine, with all
Mhm.
the 0 calorie sodas, I am so fearful that I don't know, somebody's gonna put the wrong soda in the thing, and I'm gonna, be consuming full sugar soda, which I'm sure I know the taste, but I don't know. I just have that
How
fear. So
how easy would it? Those things, those are tricky because half of those things don't taste right anyways because the mixers are always off. But there's like probably 80 different bags of syrup in the back there. You know how
right.
easy it would be to just swap one of those things up?
And
I
like,
just
no offense,
I
but
don't
those
trust it.
workers, I feel like most of them don't care. They don't care.
No.
Like, yeah, but okay. Well, hopefully those, when you guys listen to this, it'll be right before the Olympia. So if you're going to the Olympia, come say hi to Paul and I. We'll be around. But yeah, I think it's a good place to end it.
Yep. So the next podcast will be after the Olympia from us, so we'll be able to do a full-on review. I'm gonna get my popcorn and I'm gonna get a sleeping bag so I can make it through prejudging.
Oh goodness. Yeah, we'll do a review. Actually, I don't know if it'll be the next episode because we record these a week ahead of time. So, but we will do a good, nice little Olympia recap and based off of what we see being there and just, the whole experience.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening.
All right. Enjoy your week.
Yeah.